welcome. My name is Xander Sprague, and it's Epic begins with one step forward. Today, we're actually talking again to Warren Pearson about Epic in Africa. We had such a great time last episode. I asked Warren if he could come back, and we're going to talk more about how epic Africa is. Last week, we talked about being on safari. We ended up talking a lot about the animals, which are indeed the reason people come by and large, and they are awesome. But there is so much more to being on safari than just seeing the big six and all the other animals that you see. So Warren and I are going to just sort of talk about some of the other stuff that you see. So Warren, welcome again.
Thank you, Xander. It's good to see you again. I'm enjoying these weekly chats. It's good to catch up with you.
Yeah, well, it's great that we have the time to do this, and I'm always so excited to be able to share information about Africa. As you said last week, I think, unfortunately, lots of people have, misconceptions about, as you called it, the dark continent, and that it's dangerous and stuff. And it's not necessarily true. So let's talk about some of the really positive parts about going to see Africa. One of the things that I should have known, but I didn't, but when I first went on safari with you, was how incredibly epic the night sky is. And in part, I live in California. There's so much light pollution that if I see a couple of stars, I'm like, oh, wow, look at that. When in fact, there are billions of stars out in the universe. So what does the night sky mean to you? Because you obviously have had lots and lots of time out in the bush to stare at it.
Yeah, Zan, that's a good question. I think that I think the easy answer to that, and I'll probably elaborate a little bit more, but the easy answer is that it makes me feel how insignificant I actually am on this planet. When you're looking up and you start to grasp and you start to understand the enormity of it, and it's just to this day it still blows my mind, how small we are. And when you look up at the night sky, and it's what I love, and especially in the southern hemisphere, you can actually see 3 galaxies with the naked eye. Pick up a good telescope, you're going to see probably 1,000 more. But just 3 with the naked eye, and the one is obviously our Milky Way galaxy that we are part of. Our solar system is part of, and you think in that one solar system, in that one galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, there are millions, if not billions or trillions, of solar systems, and we are just one of those solar systems. Our 8 planets, and orbiting the sun. It sort of puts things into perspective, and then you sort of look out there and you can see these 2 little hazy, looks like sort of cotton balls, that hang over the southern end of the South African continent, and in the south direction. And those are the Magellanic Clouds. And those are 2 cluster galaxies that you can see with the naked eye. And you think that's just another galaxy that we can see, it's got its own solar systems. And it starts to sort of, for me, it really just puts everything into perspective. I'm constantly in awe whenever I look up. And I actually had it this weekend where I was with friends of mine. And the Friday night we were out in the wilderness, and we looked up, and he's got a 17-year-old son, and I was just explaining this to him, and you could see in the 17-year-old, who's normally sort of looking at video games and TikTok and all these other things that go on in their lives, and Okay, you're looking up, and his jaw was almost falling down. And I was just trying to keep it simple because I think you can lose people very quickly. And he was just blown away by just literally what I've spoken to you now. But when you point it out to people and you stand there, preferably I like to lie on the floor because otherwise you get a sore neck. But you just point out these constellations, and you point out these galaxies, and you point out the stars and the planets, and you can see it's not registering, but it is in a way. And I just love that part of it. It makes us feel completely, and it doesn't matter who you are in this world. If you're one of the CEOs of a Fortune 500 company, or if you're part of royalty, or whoever you might think you are and how big and grandeur your life is, this just puts everything into perspective. And that's what I really enjoy about it.
I could honestly, Warren, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I remember on our first one of our first game drives together, those many years ago. We were coming back, and it was being that it was April. I got it's fall in the southern hemisphere, so it gets dark, relatively early, 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. And we're coming back, and I remember you stopped and you said, "Look up." And then we spent like a half an hour just trying to pick out things like the Southern Cross, which in the Southern Hemisphere, if you don't know, is supposed to be the brightest constellation. I mean, sailors used it to navigate, and it was hard to really pick it out because there is such a blanket of stars. And I couldn't agree more. I look up at that and I'm like, I am so insignificant compared to this. And then I start to think about some of the light that I'm seeing has traveled millions of light years. And that star that I see twinkling up there might actually not exist anymore and may not have existed for 1,000 years. I mean, it's just, it is just.
I think that's another point that I was waiting for you to raise and to talk about, because whenever you look up, you're looking at history. And it's, if you look at, the stars, if you understand where they are, and the closest star to Earth is a star in the pointers of the Southern Cross, and that's called Alpha Centauri. Mm-hmm. And it's 4.3 light years away. So literally the light that we're seeing originated 4.3 years ago. Now, the one next to it, so there's two stars in the pointers, which is Beta Centauri. That star is 490 light years away.
Yeah.
It looks like it's right next to each other. But you think that light that we're seeing right now was emitted 490 years ago. I mean, when and where in this world can you actually do something like that and see something that came so long ago? So yeah, it is. I mean, it's vast, and it's massive, and it's huge. And I just love, one reason I like sort of switching off and just getting people to look up and enjoy the stars is just to actually slow down and just think about where you are for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour, and just almost meditate to yourself while looking up at this canvas that's above you.
And I think the other thing that it does, at least for me, sort of talking, you were saying like meditate, is at least for me, when I'm out on a game drive, my excitement level is just always elevated, because I'm so excited. And what are we going to see? And you see something really exciting and possibly scary to you, be it lions fighting or a chase or whatever, right? I mean, there's just, you're like, and so to then stop and look up and recenter yourself, I think makes part of that whole safari experience so much better. And the other thing that I want, and I'm sure you and I are going to talk about this probably longer than people want, but when you go on safari, you have this wonderfully unique experience, which is you get to see the sunrise and the sunset every single day you're on safari, because you're up first thing in the morning and you're out in the afternoon, and those sunrises and sunsets are so spectacular. And my last safari, I have like all these pictures, and I love every single one of them. And I was showing to my friends, and goes, "What is that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's a spectacular sunset." And then, "Oh, here's the sun, here's the sunrise, and here's the sun." How many of those did you get? And I'm like, "Oh, every day. They're all unique and special." If you weren't there, they just look like a sunrise and a sunset and stuff. But and you, my friend, have had the pleasure to see hundreds, if not thousands, of them.
Well, I think, for me personally, I have, and I'm lucky that I have seen the sunrises and sunsets. But for me, what's important is, and especially, because I guide a lot of people from all around the world that lead very busy lifestyles, and I often ask people, when was the last time you actually saw a sunrise or a sunset, or took the time just to watch it? And the majority of people will say, no, I'm either running busy trying to get kids to school, or I'm trying to get to work, or vice versa, coming home. So you don't really get the time. And that's another moment for me, is just to actually just, once again, slow down. And, you get beautiful sunsets all around the world. And there is something about Africa. I think there is it might be just the location that you're in, as in sort of the dust and the safari, and there's wildlife around you. But even if there wasn't, and I always say this to people, is when you go home, wherever you are in the world, just take the time to watch the sunset. Just take a breather, grab a drink if you want, and just watch the sunset. And similarly for sunrise is, I know people don't like getting up early, but to me, it's the most peaceful time of the day.
Right.
I try and get up early, and not always that easy sometimes, but you force yourself to get out of bed. And once again, I mean, for me, it's the ritual. You go get a good cup of coffee, and you go and sit, and you just listen to the birds awakening, and you get what's known as the dawn chorus. And it's these birds waking up and tweeting, and if you sit silently, it's actually so noisy while you're watching this spectacular sunrise ahead of you. And if you are in the wilds of Africa, then you might have the added bonus of listening to a lion calling in the distance, or a leopard grunting, or whatever it might be. That just adds that extra romantic side of it to it. But I always tell people, take the time, just slow your life down a bit, and
right. And so I'm going to pull up a photo, which was from actually our last drive, our last game drive, when I was with you last year. And here's the sunset, folks. And the camera is, I did a pretty good job of capturing this, but it isn't nearly, it is so spectacular. And this is what you get to see.
I think, for that, and people looking at that will look at a dead tree that's there. It's not a dead tree. It doesn't have leaves on. It's the middle of winter at the time in the Southern Hemisphere when you were there. But, that red glow is the dust that's in the air. And, just to fill people in that are watching this, that, just, if I remember correctly, Xana, literally just before the sunset, we had a crash of rhino. So a group of rhino that literally walked not too far from us. And I remember I took your two girls, and we walked out just by ourselves, and we sort of got into a closer position on foot. And just, watched these two animals walk past, not even knowing we were there. And at the same time, the sun was about to set over this escarpment range. So yeah, it's special. It really is special.
Well, I just wanted to bring that in because here we are talking about it and people are like, what's it look like? Well, that is just one example of kind of what you get to see. And it is, it's special every single time. And it's so exciting to be able to see sort of the beginning and the end of the African daylight, and again, there's so much to see when you're on safari that it's hard to really encapsulate all that it is. What are some of the other things that when you take people on safari, Warren, that you like for them to see, experience, whatever? I mean, I know there are many things, but I'm going to sort of let you run with this one.
I think, Xander, it does depend a lot on where we go. Africa is massive and it's so diverse, and it's in every area, every national park, private reserve, wherever you might be, country, you name it, they all offer something very unique to themselves. And my biggest thing when I take people on a safari is I try and get them to once again slow down. And yes, I think most people come for the animals, and I'm not going to put that sort of or brush it aside because it's a massive part of what Africa is.
Well, of course.
But for me, on a safari, and not just a trip to Africa, because on a trip to get onto Africa, I will say, listen, it's the people. Meeting the people along the way, spending time with tribes. There's a whole cultural aspect of it that I think people don't think about when they plan and book a safari. So for me, it's if we're viewing animals, it depends where we are. I always say, so many people sell. This is a term now, which I'm very aware of, and something I don't really like. And there's the term called the Big Five.
Yes.
And I must be honest, it's a term that I despise. I'm
sorry, I used the Big Six earlier.
Oh, I didn't pick that up. I'm sorry, but even still, if it was Big Six, Big Seven, because now people are calling something the Magnificent Seven, adding 2 more animals onto it. But to me, first of all, there are so many more things to see in Africa than 5 animals.
Oh, absolutely.
So don't be, and people often get so tunnel vision focused on, I've got to find these 5 animals. Otherwise, my safari's been a flop. So first of all, I'll try and explain to people where that term comes from. So where that term originated from, it's actually an old hunting term. So the big safari, big game hunters. And it was the 5 most dangerous animals to hunt on foot. So just going through those animals, there are 2 cats in them and 3 herbivores. So the 2 cats are lion and leopard. Then the others are elephant, African buffalo, and then interestingly enough, rhino, but it's not white and black. There's 2 species of rhino. It's only originally the black rhino, not the white. The white is a very easy animal to get up to. So those are the 5 animals. So everyone says, I don't want to go there because it's not a big 5 reserve. It's like, yeah, but you're going to miss so much else just by thinking, well, hang on, maybe you don't see black rhino, for example, or even white rhino, or whatever it might be.
Is hippo on there?
So this is the thing. So, the big 5, it's why they're big, because hippo aren't there, cheetah aren't there, wild dogs aren't there, zebra aren't there, giraffe aren't there. I can keep going on.
Oh, yeah.
So there's there are a lot more, there are 5 more, there are a lot more 5, sorry, let me start again. There are a lot more than just 5 animals in Africa. So, I always try and get people really interested in the small things. On our last safari, we went to areas where, pangolin. I mean, most people have never heard of a pangolin before, for example. It looks more like an artichoke. Very like if people say, well, what's a pangolin? I say, well, do you know what an armadillo is?
Right.
And they sort of, yeah, it's amazing how everyone knows what an armadillo is. But
Yeah.